Welcome, everyone. This is our June version of our Legislative Action Committee meeting. I'm Lisa Chapman, the Director of Public Policy for Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness, and I'm thrilled to have you all here with us today. Joining me is Eric Huffnagel, our CEO, a lot of our staff, and we have a very exciting and dynamic speaker today who I will be introducing shortly. So we're really glad you're here with us today. So Amy, please, you can move to the next slide. And while we're doing that, I would like to invite people. You can introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like to. You can also mute yourself so that we have the best sound quality. So thank you for that. And we will be recording this meeting, so you will get that information as well as follow-up later on this week. So I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone. Our speaker today is Celine M. Gomez, PhD, from Vote Riders. Eric's going to be walking us through some federal updates, and then I will be doing some state updates and some MICA updates and kind of giving you the information you need to know for the rest of the month. So thanks, everyone, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Celine, and while Amy's switching slides, we invite Celine to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much for having me today. I am here to talk about maybe not the most popular thing, but it's definitely something that has unfortunately affected a lot of the populations that we work with. Again, my name is Selena Gomez. I'm the National Outreach Director for Vote Riders. I lead the education and outreach piece and the field program that we have. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about voter ID or ID to vote, and also some trends that we've started to see that unfortunately are going the wrong way, right, on actually creating more barriers for individuals. And then I'm going to talk to you about some of the resources that are available to you all while you're in the ground for the constituency that you all serve, because in Michigan, there is alternatives, but because there technically is a voter ID law, it does allow us to use some of our funds to be able to support people that voters there. So if we go to the next slide, before I get into all of that, in case you haven't heard of Vote Riders before, we are a national nonpartisan organization that focuses on the voter ID component of the voting process. Now, while we do this for voting, we also understand that people need a state ID or driver's license just for basic needs, right? For housing, for employment. Sometimes you need it for some medical benefits, things like that. So while we do it for voting and that's what we get a lot of our funding for, we understand that this is a holistic approach. And we do this year round. We're not around just when there's going to be an election or anything going on, especially because the number one question we get is how long does it take? And there isn't an easy answer, unfortunately, right? It depends how many documents a person has or doesn't have and the time that it's going to take for us to be able to assist them. But we have been 13 years on the ground. We started in 2012 when there was just an explosion of voter ID laws that were starting to be passed in a lot of the state legislatures. Next slide, please. Now, just to give you an idea, I know that we're focusing on Michigan, but just to give you an idea of where the trends are going here. So 38 out of the 50 states have a voter ID law. And since 2021, about a dozen and a half of those states, either they made their current voter ID law more strict, or they didn't have one and they actually decided to implement one. And you can see that in the color-coded one here. And so in Michigan, they haven't changed it, which is technically a good thing, but there is still that burden of, even if there's alternatives, right, having to provide extra documentation. And based on a research that we did, we found that on a national level, there is at least 34.5 million voting age US citizens that don't have a current driver's license or state ID. When we say current, it means that it's not expired and that it has their current information on there, right? Their right address, their right name, which could potentially create a barrier when they try to go vote. Next slide, please. Now, the trends that we've started to see for voter ID laws and for the future is that we've had the voter ID laws, but now we're also seeing that people want to, either strict the list of the IDs when it comes to voting, like taking away student IDs or the number of acceptable IDs. Also adding and tightening voter ID requirements for voting by mail. This is really important because these are a lot of the times vote by mail is people that can't even get to the polls, right? And so this may be something that may affect a little bit more in some instances. And one of the newer things that we have seen is the requiring proof of citizenship document. So at the time of registration, so not only voter ID is when you go to the polls every time you go to vote, right? This is taking it on another level and it's separate from voter ID. This is not saying before you can even register, you need to prove your citizenship. And in Michigan, for instance, I know that there is an effort on people trying to collect enough signatures to actually put this on the ballot for Michigan in 2026. I mention this because we need to start letting people know about this if it does get on the ballot, because what we have found is that unfortunately, when people don't know about voter ID or these types of requirements, they tend to actually support it. But once you talk to them about what it actually looks like implemented and what it actually does, which is nothing because we already have safeguards for that, then people start to realize, oh, this isn't something that is, that they would support or something that anybody would be able to provide. And they would realize that it is going to be a burden and it is going to be an obstacle for many people. Now, if you're more interested in a little bit more of some of the statistics in our study, I just dropped the link to our research. We did this research in 2023 and 2024 because there was actually no research out there that focused on voter ID. And so we got together with the Brennan Center, the University of Maryland, and we did this study. We do have two statewide studies. They are for Texas and Georgia. We are looking at potentially doing additional states this year, and Michigan could be one of them. So I'm definitely happy to stay in touch with you all because if that does happen, I think it would be great for us to be able to share that with you all. And please also note that when it comes to our national study, the national numbers are not applicable to states. We don't have the breakdown, unfortunately, but it just kind of gives us an overview and an idea and a starting point as to where are we when it comes to voter ID. And then these new surges of the proof of citizenship legislations that we've seen pop up and ballot initiatives. Next slide. Now, another thing that I want to bring up is Real ID. I don't know if you all know, but our Real ID deadline, which quote unquote is deadline, just because it doesn't mean that you have to get it by then. But it was May 7th, almost a month ago. The most important thing that I want you all to know is that a Real ID is not required to vote in any state. That is the big one. You only need Real IDs to either fly domestically or to enter a federal facility. And now we've seen in the news that TSA is not necessarily prepared, so they may all still allow you to fly. It might just take a little bit more time. But as you start hearing Real ID, and the reason why I put this, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, is because Real IDs have been thrown around for the SAVE Act as well. Right? Because it does have that proof of citizenship component and people start talking about Real IDs. But what is not said is that not all Real IDs are accepted as a form of proof of citizenship. There's only a handful of states where they would actually meet the requirements that the SAVE Act has. So I just wanted to put it in here to make sure that you all had the information. We do have our website you have the link here. So if you all want to share those this slide deck, and then people can have these links, and then just know that we also have a toolkit both in English and in Spanish, just to let people know, like, what is it? Why would you need it? To make sure that people aren't confused about that. Next slide. And as promised, as we know, we haven't heard much of the SAVE Act, but we are still organizing in the sense that for us, because we do a lot of voter ID assistance, we actually are able to collect stories, for instance, of people, right, that are affected by this, from veterans to people that, with food insecurities, with married women, people that sometimes you don't think of right away, to show that, unfortunately, everybody's going to be affected by this, and there's some groups that are going to be affected more than others. We do have a Save Act toolkit where there is a one pager of just stories of individuals of how it's been hard for them to get some of their documents. There's also a one pager, and I'm sure if you all have yours, that's great. We also have our call to actions, and we're still very active on that. We're keeping an eye on that right now. It's kind of, dwindled down a little, but we always want to make sure that we're on alert. So if you all are ever interested in either staying up to date or being more active or doing something like that as an individual organization, as a coalition, as a whole, we're always happy to work with you all. And just so you know, as we go into the next slide here, that we do have some staff on the ground in some of the states. We do not have them in Michigan. However, we do have staff that will go to Michigan from time to time. For instance, we just had our Wisconsin state director go to Michigan for a couple of days, May like 21st, 22nd, 23rd, because there were some big events that were happening. So just know that all of these resources, even though we don't have somebody on the ground, one, we can provide them virtually, and two, we are more than happy to work with you all if there's going to be an election coming up or something big, to have somebody there temporarily. So the first resource that we have here is our voter ID information cards. We have these for all 50 states plus DC. We have them both in English and in Spanish, and these are completely free of charge. These are small wallet-sized palm cards that you can order. The example here is Texas, but essentially it gives you the list of IDs and alternatives in Michigan, and then in the back, it lets you know that you could still contact us and what we can help with. We can help with things like getting your birth certificate, your social security card, a ride to the ID issuing office, anything that you need assistance with, we are able to help you with that. It's just a matter of you contacting us, and it has our phone number. The 866 number is our helpline number there. Again, you can order these completely free of charge as long as you are a C3. If you are a C3, I'll ask for your number, your IRS number. If you don't have one, because we do understand sometimes it's a very grassroots effort, or even public agencies don't have one, but there is a little box that you can check that it says that you operate as a C3. You can order these at any time. We do, this one's a little bit outdated here, but we do our annual audit. So the ones that you would order, they would say that they'd be updated as of 2025. Because every year, even if there isn't a lot change, we still try to cover as much as possible there. So you can order 250. We've had people that have ordered 100,000 at a time. As long as you have a plan of distribution, we're more than happy to provide these to you. And these are really good to just have in reception areas, to have with your caseworkers, to, when tabling events, just anywhere really, because if people have any questions on ID, they can just get one of these and they know that they can contact us. We also have them digital. You can download them. So if you do any efforts when it comes to like text banking or things like that, and you want to go ahead and send this is really handy because it could come as a picture or as a short link to it, and you can actually save it on your phone, and then you pull it up once it gets closer to when you're going to go vote. So next slide. And so again, these are voter ID information cards, are probably our most popular resource. We also have our voter ID state information pages. So if you go to votewriters.org, you're going to be greeted with a color-coded map. The color codes depends on the ones that are strict voter ID laws, the ones that don't have any, and the ones that have alternatives. You then click on your state, and then it gives you all the information that you need on voter ID. We're also incorporating information on registering to vote, because like in Arizona, for instance, in New Hampshire, Louisiana, and places where they actually have proof of documentary citizenship now, there are some additional things that they need to look out for. And then it also gives you an FAQ section, and you can actually, if you or somebody who needs help in getting their ID, they can actually request our help from there as well. We also do voter ID trainings, or presentations and outreach events. So if you have any monthly calls, or if you're getting ready to do some GOTV and educational campaign, and you want to train your canvassers to be able to, you know, answer any basic questions, of course, complementing with the resources, for example, like the wallet size cards that we have, so then they don't feel like they need to be able to answer every question. We're happy to do that. We also have digital assets on voter ID that, again, later in this presentation, you'll see that I put the link to our partner toolkit where it'll really break down some of these resources. This is just a shorter presentation here. And then volunteer events. So if you have any efforts, if you want to do a text bank, a letter writing party with us, we're more than happy to do it. This often comes in handy for partners if, let's say, you all have built a database or a list of voters that you have talked to, and now you're like, hey, now I want to talk to them about voter ID. So we make sure that they have their IDs for the next election or for whatever it may be. We can work with you, we can use the list, and we can work together to get that going. Next slide, please. Now, in addition to the education and outreach and awareness of voter ID, we also have our second bucket of resources, which is the actual voter ID assistance. So like I mentioned, if somebody needs a certified copy of their birth certificate, their social security card, ID to, transportation to the ID issuing office, honestly, we've actually gotten some cases where they actually need pro bono assistance because there actually is some required legal, changes that need to happen there. Anything like that, we help with that, not just by covering the cost, but also going through the bureaucratic process. A lot of the times when we get these requests as well is when somebody's in one state and they're trying to navigate the system of another state where they're not in physically, which we do tend to see a lot. So if that is the case, again, as long as they have a phone number that we're able to communicate with the person through, we are often able to help them. We definitely have quite a bit of partnerships. With individuals who are in shelters temporarily, things like that. So we've really been able to work through some of the challenges that we may face, right? Of not having a permanent address, for instance, but we're still able to work with them very closely. So this could definitely be done through voter ID clinics. That's one of them. So for instance, let's say you have a facility and you want to provide this service. We can work with you, and as long as you have a laptop with some Wi-Fi, you can either do it just a one-time thing or recurring to be like, hey, every first Monday of the month, we're going to have vote writers here, and they're going to help you get the process started to get your ID. And we can actually host those voter ID clinics virtually. We've been able to really master that process very well. We would just need a contact person in your facility, that somebody who would be there to facilitate a couple of minor things if needed, like the laptop, right? Like the logging in type of thing. So we have that. We also have our voter ID helpline and chatbot. So it's the 866 ID to vote. And so you can either call or text us there. The first two questions, of course, is what language and then what state to give them the correct information. But after that, you're chatting with a live person. So you can right away say, hey, I need a copy of my birth certificate. Can you help me? Or whatever it is that they need. And then we have referral partners. So let's say that you may not have the ability to do those voter ID clinics, but you want to be able to refer people to us. We can send you a link of our referral form of certain information. It's like an intake form that you would fill out for the person. And then we would add you as a referring partner to make sure that we know where that person came from. So you can do that as an individual organization or as a coalition. If y'all decide, hey, this is something that we want to be able to just offer everybody that's part of the coalition, we're happy to do that. Next slide. And we also have specialized resources. So like I said, there are some communities that are more affected than others. And based on our research, these are just some of the ones. It's not all of them. But if you also work with trans and non-binary individuals, with students, with youth, with people with disabilities, naturalized citizens or recently naturalized citizens, and then tribal voters, we do have specialized resources for that just because when it comes to the ID laws, they are sometimes applied, or there's different components of the laws that not everybody knows, but it may affect them. Like for instance, for naturalized citizens, becoming a citizen sometimes isn't enough. You not just have to update all your documents, but you actually have to update the state as well when you're getting your driver's license or ID because of not you're purged out of the rolls. And that's something that isn't at the top of the list of people necessarily. And if you have any ideas of like, hey, this would be helpful that you would hear on the ground, we're always looking. Every year we try to develop a new specialized resource. The most recent one was a tribal voters in late 2024. So we'll definitely keep adding those as they come. But if you go to our website, votewriters.org, you go to resource, like you will see all of the tabs for all of these different populations, and you can check there whenever we have the new one, we list it there as well. So for more information, again, I know this was super quick. You can go here to our 2025 Partner Toolkit. It has a link. If you have any questions or you want to contact us, you can go to info@votewriters.org. And then depending on the resource, whether it's part of my program or the voter ID assistance, then we'll make sure to connect you with the appropriate person to get started with that. But what I'm also going to do right now, I am going to drop my email address. So if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to address those before you decide or you bring it back to your team as to whether or not you'd want to use those resources. But um, now I'll open it up for questions if there's any.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Gomez. This was amazing information, and I can't emphasize enough that people should contact you, what a great partner you are, what great resources you have. I put in the chat that we did order those the cards, and we've been giving them out at every event that we've been doing. So they are really amazing. We have Spanish and English. So I'm just looking in the chat of just you're getting some thank yous. So this would be a great thing if your COC wanted to partner with Vote Riders to do a clinic or just get information and resources from them to do your own, get out the vote drive or clinic. This is a great activity for the summer when things tend to be a little bit slower, and also this year heading into midterm. So we can't emphasize enough how important it is for people to vote and raise their voice. Anyone? I'm just going to pause. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Gomez?
Lisa, this is Amy. I have one. So is it really, Dr. Gomez, like it's never too early? Because I feel like, we just got off this last election. Is this something we should do this summer? Like when are for the primaries next year or midterms, excuse me? Like, is it never too early to start doing this if you're an agency sitting here and thinking, well, I don't know if I want to do it this summer?
I would say yes. First off, like I said, I can't say it's going to take X amount of time for somebody to get it because, to be quite honest, like I said, even when we've had to have legal involved, it's taken up to a year sometimes, right? And sometimes the populations that we help, they don't have all these documents readily available and it takes some time. We also have to account, are they from another state? Because it's going to take a lot more than that, more time. Not only that, but especially if you're interested in doing some type of formal partnership, I would say let's do it now because once elections come around, everybody wants to work with us, and all of a sudden, like it becomes a priority. And if we're able to work now and do kind of like a pilot program, if you want to do a trial and error and be like, let's see what actually works for me, the sooner the better, to be quite honest. Just because again, we do it for voting, but I know that your agencies, your affiliates, your organizations, it's not necessarily for voting. You need it for employment, you need it for housing, you need it for so many other things. And while that may not be your focus, we're still happy to work with you to be able to get that identification for them. And once it gets closer to election day, then we would actually reach out to them. And for those people that we help, we actually offer rights to the polls. So if they went through our process, even if it was today and elections are happening till 2026, they're going to hear from us and be like, hey, do you need a ride to go and vote? So it's never too early because everybody's different. You may have somebody who could get it within a couple of weeks. And there's some that it's going to take months. So I would encourage if you all have the flexibility to start now.
Thank you. Great information. And Max is sharing the chat that at Lighthouse in Oakland County. They will be working to register their clients so they can vote during off-season elections. Many communities have, or counties have local things this coming up this fall. And also, primaries in August, so there could be ballot measures. There's a lot of stuff happening. And I will also share that our website traffic for our Vital Docs and IDs page is like the highest traffic page that we have. So there's a lot of interest. And as you mentioned, Dr. Gomez, like a lot of people, don't have their birth certificate. They were born in another state. And so it's a long process just to get all that together. So it's great to have this resource and you can help people. This is an area that everybody asks us about. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And again, also on your websites, if you want to list our information, just let us know. We're happy to work with you all on that. And again, maybe right now isn't the time for your organization, but even if it's in a couple of months, save my email and just contact us once you all are ready to do it. We're happy to work with you all, especially in light that, there might be some additional obstacles, hoping that there isn't, right? But there may be some changes in Michigan where more and more people are going to need their vital documents like their birth certificate.
Absolutely. Thank you. We were talking earlier about some threats that there is a bill that's introduced in the House in Michigan to require people to have citizenship to vote. So that's something that could change. So stay tuned for all of that. And we will post your information on our website. Amy's our communications director. So thank you so much again, Dr. Gomez. Really appreciate it. So now, Amy, if you can switch our view to the full screen, and I will introduce Eric Huffnagel, who is our CEO at MICA for some federal updates. Eric, take it away.
And thank you again, Selena, for being with us. It's an important topic for us to share. When we think of advocacy, you think of the full range of advocacy, and certainly going to the polls and being engaged in that process is essential, particularly now that we see what's happening at the federal level. We need to make sure we take action with our feet at the polls. So thank you for joining us today and sharing that with folks. A lot of love was shared in the comments. So that just shows you that this is a topic that people are paying attention to and interested in. So thank you so much for helping to elevate the issue. So let's jump into the federal stuff. We'll go to the next slide, and let me just remind people of what we talked about at the last meeting. Just this single slide that President Trump did put out a partial budget request for 2026. That is a skinny budget, called the skinny budget. Just to remind you, historic 44% to HUD funding, and it would include 44% cut to rental assistance, and would be undermining the work of the homeless assistance grants and restructuring those and eliminating a bunch of others. So just as a reminder, we talked about it at the last meeting. Now let's move fast forward to today. Let's go to the next slide. So the big, beautiful bill, which I think is a big bunch of bull, quite honestly. That's the better triple B in my estimation. But wanted you to know that there was a lot of negotiation, including an all-night session, which some of you may have heard about, that ended with the House narrowly approving the domestic policy bill on May 22nd. The reason it was so narrow, though, isn't because there were Republican votes that were opposed to the cuts. There were some people who said, hey, that's not enough. You need to cut more. So the vote count may fool you a little bit. And so what we need to think about when we look at this bill and what's being proposed is that the legislation presents significant challenges for nonprofits in general terms, for housing advocates, as well as other community service organizations. And the good news is things slow down a little bit because it gets sent to the Senate. So the Senate now is having conversations about elements within the bill that the House passed. And there are opportunities then to make some significant changes to, when I say significant, that could be both in depth and in the scope. When we think in terms of the dollar amounts and where those dollar amounts are affected within each segment of the budget. Lots of funky things can happen. So we still have an opportunity to advocate, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but just to let you know, it's still in process, and the Senate may help us to move a little bit more to a moderate approach to things. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the threats to nonprofits, that we don't always think about that when we're talking about some of the um, appropriations bills or other action at the federal level. We're thinking more in terms of housing and homelessness, but this is more broadly about nonprofits, and many of you work for nonprofits or represent nonprofits. So I wanted to make sure we keyed on this a little bit because it does have some significant ramifications. And this has to do not so much with the funding as much as it does tax policy. And it's important for us to be thinking in terms of how that could affect the work that we're doing going forward when we think about nonprofit organizations, the charitable work that's being done, and some philosophy that are being proposed by one side of the aisle. An example here is limiting charitable deductions. So that's thinking in terms of affecting people's patterns when they're giving. If they're not able to deduct as much for a donation, then the truth is that does affect how much and how often they're donating. And it also introduces new taxes on private foundations, and that's important as well. They're like a stepped rate based on the total assets that the charitable foundation may have. But we're talking about some significant increases in taxes on those charitable foundations. The figure that I had heard in projections last week when I was participating in a meeting was $2.07 billion with the schedule that they're talking about, the percentage of tax on different organizations, different charitable foundations. Excuse me, I want to be very specific about that. Not nonprofits. We're talking about those foundations that are giving money to you as nonprofits. So you could see over $2 billion siphoned out of the charitable giving pool of funding. This actually happens. So not just looking at a potential decrease in federal funding, but also at the same time looking at the possibility of losing funding from some of our life's blood charitable foundations. Some other things affecting nonprofits, I won't go into detail on this, but it would exclude some nonprofit employers from some tax credits that are available now, including those that are paid for family leave and child care. Also, new taxes on university endowments and broader application of the unrelated business income tax. So these are things that do affect what kind of resources are available to provide services or to do research in the areas that affect the folks that we're serving. The bill includes a non-itemized or charitable deduction, but it offers only modest relief among sweeping negative changes. So there's a little bit of some breadcrumbs thrown to entice people and say, hey, this is a good change, yet the vast majority of what is being proposed could have some really devastating impacts on nonprofits as a direct result. Next slide, please. So other things within the budget, I wanted to point this out. We talked about it a little bit at the last LAC meeting, but just to reiterate, as we had predicted, proposed funding cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. It would institute Medicaid work requirements that would have to be recertified every 6 months. SNAP provisions would alter the structure of the program, requiring states basically to fill the gap. If indeed we want to see that backfilled, states would have to participate more fully in that, and then also would need work requirements for people up to age 64. It would also weaken the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which does have an impact on many of the folks that we work with. And it does cut the Medicaid funding by $4 billion and limiting the use of civil penalty funds. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about where you fit in. I just glossed over here in some ways the things that are potentially affecting us based on the budget and also some other tax implications, tax changes. So I didn't cover the wide array of things, didn't get really into the details because what I shared with you are pretty significant things, just at the level that I talked about, the limited number of things. So we need to talk about where we fit into this and the work that we need to do. We need to continue urging Congress to oppose those federal cuts to affordable housing and homelessness programs and other programs that do affect the persons that we are serving, including those upstream resources that people are benefiting from that help to make sure that they have enough resources in their household to cover costs of housing and food and medicine, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide, please. And so I want to give you some ways that you can do that. There are a number of ways as individuals and organizations. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. And we have some links for you that we will drop in for you to follow through on these things. But there's a national sign-on letter opposing cuts to the federal housing investments and supporting, in turn, supporting resources for our work. And that, again, is something that would be an organizational sign-on letter. So if your organization is willing and able to do it, you have an opportunity to do it very quickly and easily through a link that we have provided. Next slide, please. Thank you. The other thing, this is what we've talked about just about every meeting, contacting your members of Congress. And the important thing is here, we want to educate them about what's happening and what the impacts would be of the cuts that they are proposing currently at the congressional level. So you need to urge federal lawmakers to expand investments and not cut investments in the fiscal 26 spending bill. And we talk about some of the key priorities of the National Low Income Housing Coalition has elevated, and we continue to talk about these things, and there's a list here. So leaning into housing choice vouchers, talking about investments in public housing, both in the operations and in capital needs that are sorely underfunded and have been for many years. Talking about investing even more into homeless assistance grants, an eviction protection grant program, and then also tribal housing programs as well. Next slide, please. Another thing you can do, you can check out the Reject Housing Cuts and EHV Funding Cliff Action Toolkit. So that was put together by a number of organizations that are listed here. It's got talking points, it's got some resources, some advocacy ideas, etc. These are some tools for you as an individual or your organization to consider taking action on. We have a link that we'll be dropping in for that as well. Might stimulate your thinking on some of the actions you can take, but it really is important for organizations to be taking on this role of advocacy, even more so now that we have seen what the House has passed. Next slide, please. And just a reminder, post on social media. You can use this hashtag, hands off housing, and there are some sample social media messages in the toolkit the National Low Income Housing Coalition has put together. So these are ways that you can, as individuals or as organizations, can get the message out there. And certainly, if you're not contacting a legislative office directly, you can still make some hay, if you will. You can get this word out on social media, encouraging others to pass it along as well to increase the volume. Next slide, please. So here's some other things that I wanted to share with you as well that are, I think, important for nonprofits in general terms. So Lawyers for Good Government has a guidance brief that is available on how to protect your nonprofit organization. And that is getting dropped into the link is getting dropped into the chat as well. It's something for your organization to look at and think in terms of some of the steps that you may need to be taking in the face of what's happening at the federal level. And then there's also a sign-on letter from the National Council of Foundations. They're really putting out some great stuff. And I would encourage you to take a look at that as well. And that is trying to help our congressional delegation understand the importance of charitable organizations and how they impact folks in their districts. Next slide, please. And then here are a few other resources that I wanted to share with you, just FYI. Some of you are policy wonks and you find this stuff really interesting. Some of you may not, but it's still important information for you and your organizations to have. So there is a federal actions tracker that the Attorney General's office maintains, and that is giving updates on the actions that have been taken through the administration. Good for us to kind of keep track of what's going on that way. And then also the National Council on Foundations has an executive order / associated administrative actions chart, which also gives some guidance so that you can see those steps that have been taken through EO and other federal agency administrative actions. And then the National Housing Council has a housing resource center that provides a federal policy page about housing issues. These are things that are updated every week. Good thing for you to pay attention to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on. This is a lot of information, but I want you to have this. It's better to have too much than too little, so I'm sharing it with you as a resource. If you don't look at it today, you can look at it tomorrow or next week, but you have these resources, so I would encourage you to capture these links so that you can utilize these at a later date. Next slide, please. So I've covered a lot of ground here. Before I do this, let me just ask if there are any questions on anything that I've covered.
Yeah, there's 2 questions in the chat. Eric, one of you should ask. So Mitch is asking if there's a way to support advocates in other states who have Republican senators. For example, Josh Hawley of Missouri has been outspoken against Medicaid cuts. Any thoughts on that?
I don't know as if anyone from outside of those states can have an impact. I think, quite honestly, when a member of Congress is looking at where someone is from, if it's not in district or if you're not representing a statewide organization or regional organization within that particular state, it's white noise to them. They're really not paying attention and they really don't care. So unless you have connections with people in those states, and can encourage them to take some action, we really are limited on what we can do.
I will share though, Eric, that I do think that that's part of the appeal with National Low Income Housing Coalition. If you go on like their house call, every Mondays or Tuesdays now, they do share information about reaching out not only to yours, but ways, or they can reach out to some of the influential people or people that are opposed in other states.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to share that Max Glick shared about a new article released by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, talking about why expansion of the Moving to Work program in HUD is harmful for voucher holders and other income limited folks. And then David Lane was asking about being able to reach out like agencies in those states network. Yeah, so if they have like a coalition like us, like
right.
Indiana Hoosiers or other partners. And we are in a Statham tribal cohort with others. So we may be able to reach out to our colleagues in other coalitions in other states.
Yeah.
And then Dana's sharing agreed, maybe the support can come from advocates to other states, understanding support is different from their constituents. Absolutely.
Okay.
So Eric, I think that's it for what I see. So thank you. Great information. And we'll give you a few state updates and then a few MICA updates and hopefully have a few minutes for you to share what's going on in your community. So as you know, we have a new legislative session that started this January. Had a few bills introduced, not a lot, but I will say one that seems to have a little movement is the tenant empowerment package by Senator Sarah Anthony that was introduced like last session, and then right at the beginning in January, she reintroduced this. So it is having a hearing. They're taking testimony tomorrow, June 3rd at noon in the Housing and Human Services Committee, which is going to be in the Capitol building in room 403. You can attend, you can watch it on Zoom, you can put in a card of support, we are supportive of this bill. You can also look at our legislative tracker. I put the link in the chat to follow other bills, but I do know, I just was speaking with Senator Bayer that she plans on reintroducing the eviction ceiling and expungement bill, as well as the junk fee, or she's calling it the rental transparency bill. And then I think a package on application for rental housing and reusing credit reports and all that kind of stuff. So we will hopefully see these. I know she talked about trying to get them in by the end of this month. Next slide, please. Also, we are in the throes of budget negotiations right now. The Senate passed its bill in mid-May. It has a lot of nice housing and, funding for human services. Don't know if that will stick because the House hasn't completed or even shared their budget yet. They haven't passed any out of committee in appropriations. So the unwritten goal to have it done by the end of July 1st doesn't look like it will happen. If you looked at some of the Mackinac happenings that happened the Mackinac Policy Conference last week, Speaker Hall said he didn't think it was going to happen by July, so we'll have to stay tuned. And the good news is, still time to weigh in with your members in the House and Senate, and take a look at what's being proposed and weigh in and advocate for things that you want to see in there. Next slide, please. And I just can't emphasize how crucial it is to advocate right now. I was fortunate enough to be able to participate in the actual ceremonial signing of the source of income bills. This is in the Senate with the governor and Senators Bayer, Irwin, and Kavanaugh, as well as Jim Shaftsma and Elizabeth Kelly. And it was very exciting to be able to meet the governor, even for a hot second, and have a photo taken. So just to me, a reminder for all of you, how many of you worked on this package of bills over the 7 years that it took to get it passed, and that we can do hard things. We can do complex things. We just have to work together and, just be persistent. So just some ways on the slide, sorry, ways that you can continue to participate and be up to date. We want to say hello. We have new policy interns this summer. Elizabeth Grinder is with us. Going too fast. Thanks. Elizabeth Grinder, is Amy, I don't know where we are. Okay. Our interns, there we go. Thank you. Elizabeth is a master's level social work student with Grand Valley. She's living in Grand Rapids, so welcome to her. She's going to be with us the entire year, until next May, till she graduates, so welcome. And then Alex Coleman is in James Madison College at MSU, so welcome to him. So you will be seeing them with us and sending things and posting things throughout the summer at least. Next slide, please. Our policy priorities. We can go on to the next one, which is a couple trainings that we wanted to let you know about. We have one coming up in June around Housing First, Myths, Facts, and Principles. I'm going to be doing that. It's virtual. It's Monday, June 16th from 1 to 2:30. And then the next one is an in-person paid training that we're doing on motivational interviewing. And this is with Tiffany Turner. She's our trainer extraordinaire on this topic. And she will be hosting this in Oakland County at OCHN headquarters in Troy. It is a day-long training from 9:30 to 4:30. You do get CEUs from attending this if you qualify. And the cost is $150. So Eric's posting the links for the registration in the chat, and you can feel free to join us. We would love for you to join us. Next slide. This is you, Amy.
Nope, go back.
Sorry, I have one too many things during this meeting, so I apologize. I'm gonna also I had to turn the slides off to be able to take myself off mute, but I'd like to personally invite everyone on behalf of Micah to Lisa's retirement party. I will drop the invitation in the chat right now. It is the last Wednesday of the month, and it is at the Michigan Nonprofit, or what's commonly known as the Armory here in Lansing. Let me just drop that in there. If you're interested in coming, my address is at the bottom, my email, if you could RSVP to me, just so we're prepared for the number of people. And we just want to take the afternoon and adequately thank Lisa for her over 30 years of advocacy and support and care for the housing challenge in this state. So the invitation is right there in the chat. Please come if you can and join us to wish her well in her next chapter of retirement.
Thank you. I was on mute. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, everyone. I did want to circle back. Anthony has a question in the chat about any update on the community investment program legislation. Not that I know of. Eric, do you know?
I do
If you're
not.
talking, you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Do not.
Okay. We can look that up, Anthony, and get back to you. And if anyone else knows, put it in the chat. Thank you, Katie. Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate everyone. So this is the time that we turn it over to you and hear about anything that's happening in your community, anything going on. All right. David.
You know me, I'm always good to fill time.
Love it.
First of all, was at your wonderful breakfast earlier or at the end of the month, and it was an honor and a privilege to be around all those do-gooders and champions. And then I really do have to say, you could, and you know that I've shown up these last couple months now. I had read your, I like how you guys call it LAC, the LAC, not last month, the month before I read. And then I was at last month, which could not have motivated me more to network more, literally start getting together with people to see how we can team up on stuff. And then obviously this one too. I got to follow along with what you guys are saying. It's never felt like in my life there's been a more crunch time than now to team up and speak up, because it's scary, some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely. And, you know, every legislator I've ever talked to has said that they really do listen to people when however you are comfortable making your comments, whether it's an email, calling them, you know, sending them something, a card of support for, you know, testimony on a bill, just all kinds of ways that you can weigh in. And it's so important. And, you know, if you don't think that things are going the way you would like them to, or that that benefit the people that you serve and support, then, you know, you need to raise your voice, because advocacy really does make change. And that's a great way. And working with others, collaborating with others, and getting with like-minded people to raise your voice. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of your participation, for everyone. Just thank you, everyone. I'm not going to say goodbye. I'm going to say farewell and happy trails, because, you know, we may see each other. Hopefully our paths will cross. I'm looking for volunteer opportunities, and you never know. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. Eric, you took yourself off.
I just wanted to say thank you. I was fiddling around. We let the interns have the meeting off here because they're new to this. So I was trying to navigate links when Amy was speaking about Lisa and the terrific job that she has done in this role and elevating the work that we're doing in advocacy. And I just wanted to acknowledge that in front of this group and to thank her for her many years of service. And she's earned her retirement. I'm very happy for her, though we are going to miss her. But yeah, well, hopefully we can pull her out of service to volunteer to do some things along the way. So she'll still be around. She just may not be at these meetings every month.
Absolutely. I have a little bit of travel on my schedule. Yeah, don't make me cry either. But thank you, everyone. Really, I greatly appreciate it. And come to the party. Let's have some fun. So
Now you're
I hope to
talking.
see everyone. I'll be around till the end of the month. And thank you for joining our LAC meeting today. And now go raise your voice and advocate and eat some
Here.
lunch. Thanks
Take
and
care,
take care,
everybody.
everyone.
Take care and take action.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all. Welcome to our May version of the Legislative Action Committee for Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Hopefully you're having something yummy for lunch or dinner. I'm Lisa Chapman. I'm the Director of Public Policy, and it's great to see everyone here today. Just admitting people from the waiting room, so give me a moment. So this is our mission. We want to support all of you and collaborate with everyone to increase housing access and our supply and decrease and end homelessness and support communities in a way that leaves no one behind. So that's our mission today. Oh, didn't change that slide. We have a fabulous speaker today, Terry Legg. She is solo today. Brittany wasn't able to join her, so she is joining us from the United Way, and she will tell you all about her and her organization and some fabulous videos that they put together. And then Eric will run us through the litany of federal happenings, and there's a lot, so he will walk us through that. I will give some brief updates on what's happening at the state level and a couple of MICA updates, and then we also want to have time to hear from you all and hear what's going on in your communities or even just what you're thinking and feeling. So we appreciate everyone being there, and I will turn it over to Terry.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to share our story today. I'm Terry Legg, the Director of Grants and Public Policy for the United Way of Greater Central Michigan. I want to take the next few minutes to really tell you about a topic that's close to my heart, and that, of course, is invisible homelessness, especially in our rural communities like we have here in mid-Michigan. I'm honored to share our community's journey with you, not only what we've accomplished, but how we've learned to see what others don't see. Just to share a little context, I was previously the executive director of United Way of Montcalm and Ionia counties for the past 9 years. In April, we announced our merger with United Way of Gratiot and Isabella counties, now as United Way of Greater Central Michigan. We brought our strengths together to serve our 4 rural counties in a more efficiently and effective way. And this, what I'm sharing with you today is just a little part of that. So if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great, please. Actually, you just saw me. So there we go. That's a good one. I want to take it back to where it really began for me. It wasn't in a boardroom and it wasn't in any kind of a meeting. It was actually in a parking lot. If you want to go to, actually, you're perfect on the slides. Here's the thing about advocacy. We know that data doesn't change hearts. It's the stories that do. It's the sad story of that sad looking pup that makes us want to go adopt all the puppies, right? Most of us live in routine. We drive the same way to work. We pick up our kids using them same roads. We grocery shop in the same stores. And we start to believe that what we see is the full picture. But when you're in the work of convening and community change, you learn to notice the things that people are missing. You learn to look with different lenses. And that's where storytelling does, or that's what storytelling does. It trains people to see things differently. And that's exactly what started to happen in 2018. If you'll move to the next slide, please. The calls started small. A few employers started to reach out to the offices at United Way and our community action agency, and they started saying, hey, people are sleeping in their cars in our parking lot. What should we do about that? Those were calls from employers. At first, we thought it was an isolated incident, but the calls kept coming, and the employers started saying things like, there's families in those cars. At the same time, our homeless shelter was reporting a rise in bed nights. Our domestic violence shelter was full with kids. But strangely, our schools weren't seeing an increase in their McKinney-Vento numbers. That's the kids that are experiencing homelessness. Something just wasn't adding up. Our counties were reporting nearly 49% of ALICE, which is United Way's acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. They're the hardworking people that just don't have enough financial means to endure a hardship like a medical bill or a job loss, an increase in rent. Well, because I drove between Montcalm and Ionia counties every single day, I started noticing more and more campers parked on our state land. It felt like a quiet shift, one that most people probably didn't see unless they were actually looking for it. Then we learned our homeless shelter had started out giving out tents, and that was a real red flag for us as a community. As a convener, United Way has the unique ability to sit on multiple tables with corporate partners, municipalities, economic development, human services, schools, and even our legislators. That gives us a bird's eye view of when problems are starting to begin. At that same time, our data from 211 was telling us that housing and shelter was the #1 need and most often unmet need in our communities, and it still is. So our local housing collaborative executive team got together and started asking some questions like, what would we do if we had the perfect set of funding? What do we actually need to know about homelessness in our community? We realized we didn't understand the invisible forms of rural homelessness, especially for families and youth, and we needed better data and better stories. That's when we partnered with our schools to distribute a youth survey. We used 10 voluntary questions that students aging 12 to 24 could respond to. We were shocked that we received over 1,800 responses. And here's the number that stopped us in our tracks. 1/3 of those youth reported couch surfing. That's a massive number in a rural region. It's massive no matter where you're at. But in a rural region with no supports, that's huge. And it was also a number that wasn't being captured in our homeless counts. But now we had some stories, and we had the beginning of a case for funding. If you could go to the next slide and play the video, that would be wonderful. Oh, sorry, back up one slide. Sorry about that. And our video series that we're working through, this little video is just a little glimpse of a commercial, you can say, that our homeless shelter put together for us. So if you click on that black square, it should come up with a play bar underneath it. Hopefully. Just hover on that black square. All right, well, we'll skip that. How about you play this video? Can anyone hear that?
No.
Wanted
No
to
audio.
create some type of media.
Thank you.
The homelessness video series was an idea that came about from one of our local homeless shelters. They wanted to create some type of media that would help educate the public on rural homelessness and dispel some of the myths and stigmas around homelessness. So they approached United Way to see if we could come up with funding to do that project. Throughout some community connections, our team was able to secure funding from a McKinney-Vento grant. McKinney-Vento is federal funding to make sure that students have equal access to education. And one of the things that that funding can be spent on is educational materials. The goal of this video was twofold. So it was to educate the public on the unique realities of rural homelessness and to help reduce the stigmas surrounding folks experiencing homelessness. And I believe we achieved that. When you are watching this series, you're hearing from folks who are meeting the needs in homelessness every day and how it's not an individual failure, but it's a systemic issue, and how there are multiple things that need to happen in order to solve homelessness. But it really starts with that safety net provided by our shelters and those who work in the housing industry. So this video series, I think, is a success because it combines so many different community partners who work in housing, who came together to talk about the unique needs of our community, how we can address that, and again, support folks experiencing homelessness versus labeling them as one thing or another.
So let me give you a little backstory on how we got to this video series. That survey that we did with the youth, it really told us that we had some big challenges that we had to figure out. In most districts, the McKinney-Vento liaisons were doing that job with the other 5 responsibilities that they were doing. Many of them didn't even know that they were the liaison or what a liaison really needed to do. So we found that the reporting in our school districts, and we have 13 districts in Montcalm and Ionia alone, and 7 in Gratiot and Isabella. And we found out that that reporting was inconsistent. And if we don't have accurate data, how could we ever write for grants to try to help solve for these issues? And how could we advocate for additional resources? During the pandemic, we received additional McKinney-Vento funds that came into our community. So we did something that no one else in the state was doing. We used those funds to hire 2 community impact managers. Brittany Stoneman, in the video you just watched, is the Gratiot Isabella liaison or community impact manager that we hired. And then we had one in Montcalm and Ionia as well. Their job was really to train school liaisons so that they knew what they were supposed to be doing, build relationships with our nonprofits, help families to access services, and most importantly, create a culture for reporting. We wanted the schools to understand that their numbers weren't just numbers. They were the story that would get us services in the future. With the early youth data in hand, the strong school partnerships developed, we launched a regional housing study to dig deeper into what was really happening. We interviewed students, school staff, human service leaders, families, municipalities, pretty much anyone that would talk to us. And we talked to employers. Many of them said that they lacked housing for their employees, and that employees often left because their housing situations changed. We heard from many others that wanted to expand their businesses, but couldn't because they couldn't find any housing for new employees that they wanted to hire. Our goal was to create a story-based, community-rooted report, one that showed the full ecosystem of rural housing and homelessness and the cost of inaction. Then the pandemic hit and the housing study came to a screeching halt, but the human service sector and the nonprofits didn't stop. The leadership team from our housing collaborative kept meeting every single week, and we used that time to really ask hard questions and brainstorm big ideas. We kept coming back to this question: how do we build housing for youth and families when there's no funding? What can we do creatively with what we have? We finished the housing study, and last April, just in Montcalm and Ionia County alone, we were approximately 32,000 housing units short. Kent County, in comparison, was over 53,000 housing unit shorts. That push for Grand Rapids keeps coming into our county, making our invisible homelessness even worse. And more importantly, most of our homeless are working people. They just simply can't find a home. This past fall, we began working on this video series that Brittany was talking about in the video. We completed 8 different videos that educate for rural homelessness. What we found over and over is that even when we talked at the state level, we were honestly always questioned, are you sure there's people on the state land? And we know there's people on the state land. So we wanted to be able to get our story out a little better. And so through this video series, we use it at any single meeting that we can come to and share this video. And it talks really about what is homelessness in a rural community? Why does homelessness in a rural community look different than in an urban setting? How can we impact it? And what are our schools really doing about it? In addition to the video series and being able to educate people on what homelessness looks like in a rural community, where individuals aren't standing on street corners holding a sign like people often think homelessness looks like, we've made some real tangible progress. We've doubled the number of beds in our homeless shelter. We've created a better pipeline between the schools and community resources. We've taught people how to tell the right story to the right funders, which is really key. We have municipalities that are changing their zoning to allow for housing density. That in itself is a huge win that takes years and years to accomplish. Now, we haven't opened a family shelter and we still desperately need one, but now developers are building housing of all types in our region. And many of them cite workforce housing as their motivation, thanks to our employer advocacy. If you want to see the whole video series, I really encourage it. It's long. It's broken up into 8 to 11-minute video segments, but I encourage you to take a peek at it. The link is dropped in the chat for you. So what I'm really going to leave you with is, in rural communities, you only get one, if you're lucky, one shelter, one domestic violence shelter, one food pantry, one school liaison. When people fall through the cracks, there's nowhere else to land. But if you can teach people to see invisible, you can tell better stories. If we look at our community through new lenses, we can make real change. Now, it hasn't been fast change, and it hasn't always been easy, but it's been meaningful and community driven. Everybody at the table change. United Way's role is to convene, to listen, and to help make invisible issues visible through partnerships, policies, and stories. Thank you for the opportunity to let me share some of our stories today. And really, that's what I have for you. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thanks, Terry. I just wanted to, there's a few people who came on after you started talking. So I just wanted to emphasize, and this is an amazing project. Oh, you're getting a lot of
Thanks.
comments in the chat, but you utilize the McKinney-Vento funding to help promote this video series. And it's a great way of storytelling and sharing your data and, the meaning behind it and the impacts in a different way. And I think this is fantastic.
I think you have to look at things differently, and you have to be brave enough to answer, to brainstorm things that you can't solve, right? We can't solve this, and we didn't even know where to begin, but we were able to ask those questions and take the time needed and be patient. I mean, this has been a 6-year project. And I mean, just last year we were holding a housing conference, and I remember saying to my board of directors, United Way can't build houses. Like, we can't solve this problem. So what are we doing? And that was really pivotal for us, because that's a question that we've asked all along the way. What are we doing? And we have to remind ourselves that we're advocating for those that cannot say anything or that don't qualify for something. So how do we get creative in our leadership and try to think differently? And when you can use McKinney-Vento dollars for homeless education, this is a great way to get that word out to a lot of people. So our hope is really at a state level. We've seen changes since the pandemic. ALICE is now a standard acronym that the state uses,
Yep.
and it's now in grant funding, so that people that are above the poverty line but making less than $70,000 a year can still get help in different programs. And that's just a part of the work that we're doing that comes from this. And so it takes all of us to really be brave enough to ask questions.
Yes. Fantastic. Thanks so much, Terry. Really appreciate it. And hopefully you can stick around with us. And if people have questions in the chat, they can reach out to you. So
Absolutely.
thanks
Thank
again.
you, everyone.
Really appreciate you. Thank you. Great work. We have a lot to cover today. Eric does for the federal update, so I will turn it over to him now.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you again, Terry, for being with us and giving that great presentation with some wonderful information. You got a lot of love in the chat with people who agree with that. So let's get moving on. I wanted to give an update at the federal level, talking about some of the administrative things that we've talked about already, just giving you an update, and then also talking about the budget and what that looks like going forward for fiscal year 2026. So with respect to administrative actions, I just wanted to give an update with respect to the affirmatively furthering fair housing revisions that have taken place with respect to that interim final rule. So we did participate. We reported on this at the last meeting, but I just want to let you know that the National Fair Housing Alliance did circulate a sign-on letter that we joined in providing comments to HUD opposing this new interim rule, which is now entitled Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Revisions. 136 different signatories on it, and there were some national organizations and then 35 statewide organizations, including ours. So I just wanted to point out there are things that are happening with respect to people trying to push back on and or otherwise provide feedback about these changes that are taking place administratively through HUD. Next slide, please. Just an update on some of the staff departures. We've talked about this. All of us have speculated about this for a few months now, but now it's becoming a little bit more of a reality. So I just wanted to offer what we know, and certainly would like you to share anything that you may have heard as well. But the Office of Personnel Management at the federal level, as you know, offered deferred resignations for federal employees. They did that back in February, and the resignation basically was offering folks a buyout, saying, "Hey, we're going to give you 8 months' pay if you say that you'll hit the road." Well, that did have a response, and a large number of federal staffers took that offer, and then HUD went another step further, and they offered a second resignation offer back on March 31st, and they thought that there was a lot of feedback that there were a lot of employees who really wished they had taken that first offer. So, hey, can you offer it again? So that buyout, or the fork in the road, as it was called, required HUD employees to opt in by April 11th. Just want to give you a heads up. What we have seen at this point is that about 2,300 of HUD's 9,900 employees, just under a quarter of their workforce, have taken the deferred resignation offers, the first round and the second round combined. That's a lot of staff. About half of the HUD field office also has pursued the fork in the road offers, and that does include some key personnel that we're aware of. Next slide, please. All right, now there is another executive order that was issued. Some of you may have heard about it. It's called the Restoring Equality of Opportunity and Meritocracy. You might be able to guess what this is about, but in essence, it's saying, hey, this is just another way of trying to rid ourselves of any reference to equity and the DEI work and fairness, et cetera, that we've had for decades. And what it does eliminates the use of disparate impact liability and tells the Attorney General to repeal anything, any regulations for all federal agencies, including HUD, that derive from Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that actually takes into consideration the disparate impact liability. So I've got a note down at the bottom. I'll just remind people that when we talk about disparate impact, we're talking about a way of proving housing discrimination without actually having to show that discrimination was intentional. Okay, just to put that in simple terms, now we need to show that there was some intentionality with respect to the discrimination, rather than simply looking at what's happening that's discriminating against people that may or may not have been intentional. which then puts the burden of proof on the entity that's going to be investigating something. It really reduces the ability to enforce. It directs all federal agencies to deprioritize enforcement of statutes and regulations that do include disparate impact liability. And it does require the Attorney General and the heads of all the federal agencies to determine whether or not any federal authorities preempt state laws or state regulations or practices that impose disparate impact liability, or whether or not they have constitutional infirmities that warrant federal action. Long story short, this just really waters down the effectiveness when we think in terms of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 and the Fair Housing Act that will reduce the ability of enforcement with respect to discrimination. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about the really ugly stuff. That's the federal budget for the upcoming year. We have talked about this the last couple of months about what we have heard with respect to what kind of numbers might be coming out of the executive branch for the upcoming budget. Well, there was something that was released by the White House, and surprise, no surprise, the Trump administration is proposing massive cuts to domestic spending, and it would be the lowest level of the modern era, which is post-World War II. So that's going to be taking us back quite a bit when you think in terms of the numbers that we are at now versus what we're looking at with this budget cut. It's 1.7 trillion in discretionary funding. Just so you know, last year, the current 2025 budget is 1.606 trillion. So overall, it's an increase in discretionary funding. But here is the smoke and mirrors that it would dramatically cut programs and the role of government in the programming that is funded. The Defense Department would see a 13% increase to more than $1 trillion. So out of that 1.7, again, it's an increase, but that increase is going to be going to the Defense Department. It's not going to be going to the non-defense agencies. So that means that there would be a slash for all non-defense agencies by about 22%. That includes some cuts to HUD that would really take away some of the most important tools that we have when we think about affordable housing and homelessness and community development funding. Next slide, please. Thank you. So drilling down a little bit, I wanted to just talk in terms of some of the elements within the HUD budget that would be impacted if indeed this is pursued by Congress. You know, the House and the Senate also have to buy into this. This is a proposal from the executive branch, but just keep this in mind. This is what we're looking at with respect to cuts of about $27 billion from HUD's rental assistance programs. That's the housing choice vouchers, public housing, project-based rental assistance, etc. And it would also be changing how these programs operate. It would be merging programs, and it would be moving, in some cases, monies into block grants. So it would combine these that I have here in this slide, moving them into one program, which would be called State Rental Assistance Block Grants. And so this proposal would be cutting HUD rental assistance by about 43%. 43%. And it would be adding a 2-year time limit on receiving rental assistance for, quote, able-bodied adults, unquote, which of course we know that would be yet to be defined and sometimes is interpreted differently by different people within different structures within the federal and state government. And it encourages states to provide funding to share in the responsibility. So it's saying not only they're cutting the funding, they're going to be pushing the burden on states to backfill that to make sure that there's adequate funding, because Lord knows states aren't doing their share and the federal government feels that they should. So that is going to be a choice that has to be made then at the state level to think in terms of whether or not there are funds and a willingness to backfill that $27 billion in cuts. Next slide, please. So the homelessness assistance grants, which so many COCs around the state rely on, would be cut by about $500 million. We'll be consolidating the COC program and the Housing Opportunities with Persons with AIDS program into the Emergency Solutions Grants program. And under the proposal, again, people experiencing or at risk of homelessness would only be able to receive assistance for 2 years. Next slide, please. Other things to be looking at are the elimination of things such as the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Investment Partnership Program, the Indian Housing Block and Native Hawaiian Housing Block Grant Program, pushing them together into a single entity that would be formula-based, and then the Family Self-Sufficiency Program would be gone. So just wanted to note that the proposal argues that these programs are duplicative in purpose, and such programs should be better left to state and local governments to figure out. Again, passing that responsibility down the line. Next slide, please. Okay, so it would also include reduced funding for HUD's Healthy Homes and Lead Hazards program, eliminating the Pathways to Removing Obstacles to Housing program. It would eliminate the Fair Housing Initiatives program. And I just want to note that in the proposal, it does assert that the request would maintain, quote unquote, maintain support for the Fair Housing Assistance Program to fund state and local enforcement agencies processing fair housing complaints under the Fair Housing Act. So this is interesting because it states that there would be funding maintained for that purpose, but they have reduced the enforceability with the administrative action that I talked about before. Next slide,
Eric,
please. Yeah, I'm
there's
sorry.
a question in the chat about the 2-year clock on persons receiving funding. And I don't know if the details are hammered out yet, but
Yeah,
it might
no,
be an individual thing
and that's a
rather
good
than,
question.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no detail on it at this point. Again, and this is a proposal that comes from the executive branch. The details get hammered out when the budget is actually formalized. But that's an excellent question to be considering. And what does that mean? Um, is that at any point in the past? Is it just going forward? Who makes the determinations about those things, et cetera, et cetera? So maybe a little premature to put that out there, but I just want everybody to know that that's what's being proposed by the executive branch. Next slide, please. So let's think in terms of beyond HUD. There are also other programs that do provide services that affect the persons that we're serving. So USDA would have some major cuts. They would have an increase of 74 million in the rental assistance program, but it would also be slashing 10 times that much from the rural development program. And the administration is arguing too duplicative, too small to have macroeconomic impacts, costly to deliver, et cetera, et cetera. So making the case for the elimination of those funds. Next slide, please. LIHEAP, all of us probably heard of this. If you haven't, that's the elimination of low-income heating and energy assistance program, which has been cut already through DOGE, but this is just suggesting that it would not be included in next year's budget either. Next slide, please. Okay, can we go back a second? I want to just point out an interesting argument that's made in the proposed budget resolution. It's unnecessary because states have policies preventing utility disconnections for low-income households. So that would be the rationale for eliminating LIHEAP funding because states have laws on the books that don't allow you to shut people off. So in essence, we don't need to provide any funding to help support it because, hey, they can just keep their connection going because state law provides for that. Some holes in some logic here in the real world. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa. Can we go back again? Yeah, holes in the logic. I want to point one more thing out, and I should have just read the whole piece there. Um, the budget will support low-income individuals. Instead of having cash to support them, you'll have energy dominance in this country, which will mean lower prices and American first economic platform. So those things will make it unnecessary to provide any kinds of supports to assist low-income households with respect to their energy assistance. I'm fascinated by that being a justification included in an executive budget. I'm sorry, I won't go back to the slide again, Lisa, if you move us forward. Thank you. So those are the highlights from the executive uh, budget proposal. There's a lot more detail than that, and actually we'll drop a link in to the chat so that you can actually see a more detailed breakdown of the entire proposal. But I wanted to switch and talk a little bit about Congress because they have a very important role in this. Again, what the executive branch puts out is a proposal. It's just a request for what the president would like to see, but the House and the Senate have to duke things out. And typically, all three, the White House, the Senate, and the House, have not been in alignment. And the question is, will there be enough conversation taking place that's reality-based to talk about the impact of potential cuts, or will there be a slim majority that will push everything through that's consistent with what the president is recommending? So just to give you a kind of a read on things, that the House and the Senate went on a spring recess. And then they've come back and, well, before they had a budget resolution that kind of gives the framework for how much money each of the committees would be able to work with. But in that resolution, it's important to be thinking in terms of Medicaid and food assistance um, being on the chopping block. So they put this blueprint together before they left, and then they've come back, and now those committees are going to be getting together and taking that as guidance, that blueprint, that resolution that was passed, and they will start hammering out what the budget will look like. And just as a reminder, at the last meeting, I talked about reconciliation, that's the approach that's being pursued, which is a special procedure that allows a bill to pass the Senate with a simple majority of 51 instead of the supermajority of 60 votes, which historically is what the Senate has done. And they're a more conservative body. And the idea here with that is, well, let's make sure we really have this right. Let's make sure we've got 60 votes to be conservative and be very thoughtful and make sure we can get 60 votes to pass a budget. The House doesn't have that. They're just a simple majority. This reconciliation process, which is taking all of the budgets from all the departments and taking action at once. It's bringing them all together and you're taking action at once. That will trigger the reconciliation, as opposed to sometimes Congress will take on a couple of budgets at a time and vote them through. So pieces of it as opposed to the entirety of it. But this is how they're approaching it now, is reconciliation, so they can get around that need for the 60 votes. Just FYI, that does put more pressure on us to be communicating to members of the House and Senate to slow down the train, if you will, and to make sure that there is some due diligence in checking numbers and making sure they understand what those impacts are. So something can be pushed through because the House and the Senate are both Republican-led. Theoretically, you don't need any bipartisan work here to have those bills passed. That's a real fear. Next slide, please. So again, talking about Medicaid and food assistance, this is just a little bit more detail for you to help put it into a context. In a previous meeting, we did walk through that a little bit more with respect to Medicaid in the state of Michigan. Now we're also talking about SNAP, just so you have a context. So Medicaid serves over 72 million low-income people around the country, and SNAP serves 42 million people around the country. But in Michigan, Medicaid covers 2.8 million residents. So that's about 1 in 4. About 25% of the folks who live in this state are receiving a Medicaid benefit. And then if you look at SNAP, it's 14%. or excuse me, 14.7, almost 15% of Michigan residents receive SNAP benefits. These are pretty significant numbers when we think in terms of people who are low income, who are eligible to receive these services, may have to forego all or a portion of the Medicaid resources that they are receiving. It's important for us to think about this because the state has put more and more into this over the years. There's been a significant increase in the Medicaid expenditures since 1991 for a number of reasons. But then the question will be, is there an ability and a political will to backfill this? If indeed this is going to be pushed on the shoulders of the state to continue with respect to Medicaid and put more into it, is it even realistic to be thinking in terms of the dollar amounts? And I would suggest that it's not. That would not be a viable alternative. So these are some of the what we call the upstream needs when we're thinking about supporting people with expenditures that are not their housing, but are other expenditures in their budget that if those elements are lost, those resources are lost, it puts them at greater risk of homelessness going forward. Next slide, please. So this gets back to where do you fit in? You can take action. You need to take some action. So we'll go through kind of our usual here. So go to the next slide. Just want to remind everybody that you can reach out to members of Congress. And as we've talked about over the last 6 months, maybe 9 months even, about some of the key elements that we feel need to be included in the upcoming budget and increases that are needed. I think it's important for us to really stand behind these elements in particular, knowing that there is potential reduction and or elimination of some funding that currently we believe is essential for the work that we are doing, because it will not get better for the people we serve if these resources are gone. Again, the HUD budget was at 43% would be cut. That's a drastic amount that will definitely impact the ability to provide services and the tools available through the federal government. Next slide. So we do have a link that we're putting in for you to be able to just pop into a page, toss in your name and address, and then it will help you, it will facilitate that work. So you can contact your member of Congress. You don't have to look it up. You don't have to, draft an email separately. You don't, all that. This helps to facilitate that. So if you haven't gone there yet, please go to that link and take a look at that page, and please take action on it. This is just a reminder also about having your voice heard. And so whether or not you're reaching out and talking about specific elements within the budget, or if you're talking about concerns that you have with respect to the loss of programming or staffing at HUD, et cetera, email or call the offices. You can use social media to communicate these things as well, because those offices do monitor it. So don't think that if you're putting it on social media, it's just for your circle of friends. There are other people in elected office who monitor these things. Then the sharing of stories. And this just goes back to the importance of the messaging and storytelling, which Terry opened up with. And I think we know that this is the time we really need to step up with that as well and share those compelling stories, because elected officials are going to need to hear this. Members of Congress, as well as our state legislators, need to hear these stories and how people are impacted in their districts. Next slide, please. So I wanted to ask folks about what kind of interaction they have had with members of Congress, and I'm specifically interested in hearing about any interactions you had with them during the spring recess. At the last meeting, we just reminded people that they were going to be on recess, and it would be an opportunity to try to catch them in the district, invite them to take a tour, to sit down for coffee or whatever it may be. But just want to know if anyone here did reach out to the member of Congress, whether it was while they were in district or if they reached out and communicated with them, and what kind of interaction and or response they have received from their elected officials. Anybody have anything they want to share?
I don't think so, Eric. So hopefully people, if you feel comfortable putting it in the chat, you can do that. But yeah, thank you, Eric. That was a lot of information to digest. You have the links in the chat for some of the take action elements and some of the background. Thank you, David.
Changed it
Yes.
all.
If you haven't yet, this is a good time to start. It's always appropriate. So yes, please do. And we have as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about ways you can do that. We're going to do some state updates. And I also wanted to just check and see. I saw that you can go to the next slide, Amy. Thank you. That Rep. Devendorf was on. Are you still there, Rep. Devendorf?
Yes, I'm here. I was just listening and continuing to learn.
No, I appreciate you. And did you want to say anything about what's going on the state level with appropriations or anything else? Any bills?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo everything that has been offered in the presentation thus far today about the seriousness of the federal cuts, how we need to be getting creative in response and figuring out how to ensure that our neighbors have the ability to meet their basic needs regardless. We're going to have to just come together. In addition to the Homeless Bill of Rights, which has already been sent to government operations to die, although we will keep working on that and also looking at ways to split that up to see if we could just establish standards and immunity for local governments so that they could respond with holistic best practices to our unhoused community members. In addition to that bill, we also are reintroducing the tenant right to counsel. And we are working with Representative Jimmy Wilson's office to reintroduce the bill to cover relocation fees, for the landlord to cover relocation fees. But we are really looking for any guidance and I'll continue to follow your priorities because I know that we can't afford to not make progress still on tenants' rights and on housing. Of course, I'll still be working with MSHDA. I had a meeting with the Department of Civil Rights the other day and talked to them about how they were impacted by federal cuts in housing, their work to enforce against housing discrimination. And they are finding ways to still meet that need by shifting that work to state funding sources, considering they do not have those federal dollars to count on. But we should expect more cuts from the federal government for so many of these programs. And this is at a time when I really wish we could be doing things like reinstituting rental assistance programs that we know both our landlords and our tenants really appreciated and needed, and frankly are going to need terribly within the next several months as we all get down to living off of the bare minimum. So I will stay in contact about all of those, probably through Lisa Chapman and Amy Stevenson, and send on that information as soon as they're introduced. And please continue to be in contact with me about what your priorities are going to be and what you feel is most feasible as you are talking to other legislators for this legislative session.
Thank you, Rep. Devendorfer. Thank you for being such a great advocate for our unhoused population. We really appreciate your collaborative nature. That's just who you are. So thanks you so much. In addition to these bills and the ones that Rep. D talked about, we also have a couple that will be introduced: the eviction ceiling and expungement, the junk fee bill with Senator Bayer and other Senate partners. So we have a lot more tenant protections hopefully being introduced and hopefully enacted, but there's a lot of work ahead of us with all of these devastating cuts. So we can go to the next slide, and I want to remind you, yes, it's appropriations time. We have a legislative tracker that Eric just dropped in the link to, so you can check on what's been going on and see what's happening with some of the legislation and which committees, and if there's anything important. In terms of our appropriations for the budget process this year for October for the 25-26 budget, the Campaign to End Homelessness has advocated for additional funding in the Michigan Supportive Services Transformation Fund. As you may recall, this funding was appropriated in the past and $6 million in the fiscal year 23 budget. And early results show a 99% housing stability rate among the 470 households. It's just amazing. So this money would be transformational to those that really need the deep and broad services while they're in housing to help them stay in housing. So if you could weigh in on that. I think Eric popped a link in around the this particular ask. So you can take a moment to do that. That'd be greatly appreciated. It's, if you've never advocated, this is a good time to start because there's so much going on in terms of threats to federal programs, the safety net that people really need and enjoy, Medicaid, LIHEAP, SNAP, you name it. So we really want to encourage you to continue to reach out. You can also do sign-on letters. We've been participating in that with some of our partners and coalitions in terms of the AmeriCorps cuts that have been just recently made known. So continue to reach out, support for Medicaid, and also follow trusted sources. I sign up for all these newsletters and read all the information. It keeps you up to date as well. Coming to our call on a monthly basis and others like it is really a way to kind of keep on top of things. So next slide, please. Just a few quick updates from us. Here's our policy priorities. I wanted to thank those of you that were able to join our advocacy day last month. We had about 140 folks who attended and we had 57 visits. Thank you to our partner and sponsor, the Michigan Network for Youth and Families. We really appreciate it. And also I would encourage you to diversify your funding streams, if at all possible, to look to philanthropy for some funding, your community foundations. And I also wanted to note that the Health Endowment Fund has 2 open areas of funding right now: community health impact and capacity building. So those are really great. Rep. Devendorf, you said you could do an update on AmeriCorps.
Yes.
Thank you.
So most of my background is in nonprofits, and which just really usually on the average day explains the empathy I have for all the work that's done on the ground. I also am co-chair of the governor's Legislative Service Commission caucus, which works in partnership with the governor's Community Service Commission. And as AmeriCorps has been cut, it has also cut her staff to her own commission as we were working on solutions to AmeriCorps being cut. But we have put in legislation for drafting based on conversations between myself and Representative Kathy Schmaltz, who is my Republican co-chair in the House for that Legislative Service Caucus. And the bills we've put in would create an MCAH program that would aim to fold AmeriCorps programming into it. Ideally, sooner than later, but we also acknowledge that bureaucracy and the legislative process takes time. And you may not be able to get your AmeriCorps Vistas back on the rolls before this summer, but we did put in an appropriations request to cover the cost of your AmeriCorps Vistas and also the work of the Governor's Community Service Commission. And really that it's a minimal appropriations ask. It's less than $25 million, which is of course a lot to all of us, and also so small compared to what we ask for build projects and all of these other things. We also put in a bill to try to change the law, and this is the least likely of all of them, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that it was hanging out there, to try to change the law so that our AmeriCorps Vistas who are now off of their assignments are eligible or can become eligible for unemployment. Now, that last one comes with a lot of only ifs, because we also know that we'll continue to expect cuts from the federal government. Those cuts will continue to be passed down. We have House Republicans already acknowledging that there will be preemptive cuts of all of our service programs. So I think that being able to extend unemployment benefits to a group that is not currently covered is a very slim chance, and also one that we may as well have a bill for. So those have not been introduced yet. They are being drafted as priorities, so they are being expedited, and the Speaker's office also knows that they are coming, and I've already been in conversations with them about starting to create and build the MCAH program.
Oh, wonderful. This is all wonderful news. Thank you for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. And Dana, you have a question? You have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Representative Devendorf. This is Dana Watson with East Lansing City Council and also Am County Health Department. And I was just curious, I have 3 full-time team member colleagues along with the AmeriCorps program folks that were cut. And I was wondering if what you're proposing is a possible avenue for them to keep their full-time positions, the leads for the AmeriCorps members.
So to be blunt, that is certainly what I'm trying for. That is certainly my goal and aim, is to make this happen as soon as we can, so that you don't lose the folks that have already been on the job and are already integral to your work. But I also have to acknowledge that this depends on budget appropriations and the budget process, and it may be something that we don't get approved until the middle of the summer because of that. So the creation of the program and the funding of the program, they both have to happen in a complementary way, which I know you know from all of your good work in East Lansing. I will try to get that done as soon as possible. And frankly, what is going to help me is the pressure that my fellow legislators are already receiving about the fact that defunding AmeriCorps impacts their ability to function every day. So I do encourage the letter writing campaigns and the phone calls, and with an acknowledgement that there is something in the works that needs support, because with that kind of demand, we have a greater chance of them carving out the opportunity for us to fund this sooner than later, when the likelihood is we would have to wait till the middle of the summer.
Right. Wonderful. Well, thank you for the information. And we had an AmeriCorps and a Vista program, so we're also hurting. And I know, placing people across the state, you're all hurting. So we really appreciate that. And we will definitely amplify any asks for, people reaching out to their legislators to support both of those bills. Just a few quick updates. We have a free training coming up Monday, May 19th. It is the free one, and it is on the topic of engaging tenants and meaningful feedback. So I don't think it could be any more timely. It's from 1 to 2:30 on Monday, May 19th. So hopefully you'll be able to join us. And then next slide, please. We are hosting, it's in the midst of all of these negative things that we're hearing and the budget cuts and everything, we annually take the time to celebrate our champions across the state who are doing an amazing job, and all of you are. So we are getting together for breakfast on Tuesday, May 20th at the meeting space in Lansing to recognize champions in advocacy, data, community, homeless awareness month, and volunteerism categories. So we hope you can join us and take a couple hours out of your day. It is really, in my view, it is really so inspiring to hear all the great work that's happening. And it's a great networking opportunity too. So hopefully you can join us. I also wanted to let you know that we have a job opening for an associate director of policy and engagement with MICA. Hopefully Eric is popping the link in the chat, but it is posted until May 23rd on Indeed and LinkedIn. So if you want to do some great work in the area of advocacy and policy work, this may be right up your alley. Next slide, please. We have just a moment, but if people have anything that you want to share about what's going on in your community, successes, challenges, anything that you want to share. Please feel free to unmute. Unfortunately, I don't think we have a way of virtually log into Breakfast of Champions. I think, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not live streaming or anything. You're
We're gonna definitely try to live stream for
Okay.
folks to be able to join from wherever they are, especially if they know the champions and want to be part of that day, but they can't logistically. So check into our Facebook page especially, and we should be streaming from there.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you for
Amy. And
asking
David?
that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, David.
So, last month at the Detroit Rescue Mission, Mary Sheffield, who's city council chair currently and mayor hopeful, held a task force meeting for homelessness. And Hand was there. The Detroit City Services offices was there, part of Detroit Housing and Revitalization. And you can tell how horribly they're trying to face the realities of what we're all dealing with, and especially in light of everything Eric brought up.
Sure.
But as you know, that earlier this year there was the tragedy where the two people were found dead in a garage, and so they're trying to implement some things. But some, we need to push, because there's a balance between the PR that goes on and the real solutions that go on.
Right.
So I'm hopeful that it's still an opportunity for some positive change.
Thank you. And I think I know they're looking at their coordinated entry system and responding to people who call in, and people, getting help to people, in real time. So yes. And something that we all need to do periodically, just to check our system. So thank you for that. Thank you. And thanks to all of you. I think we're going to just move on to our last couple slides and just say thank you for everyone. I know a lot of people have 1 o'clock calls and meetings, so thank you for joining us. And just keep a lookout for us via email and social media. There's a lot of ways to connect with us. Can go to the next slide, please. And we just thank you for your interest and your collaboration and partnership. And we will see you hopefully at BMCC in a couple weeks. If not, we'll see you around next month. Thanks, everyone, and take care.